Pick Television, the new face of black. We have a wonderful author spotlight. It's a chance for you to get your book or publication seen by over 60 million subscribers on Roku television. We're the new face of black television. Pick TV on Roku. Welcome to the new face of being in the black. Pick Television. Welcome to the importance and power of reading. I'm Michelle, the computer lady, your host. During some awful dark times in America, black people were denied the ability to read, to learn how to read, to write, or to even own books. And that has hampered our communities up until this day. Now we're going to have important conversations about the importance and power of reading. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's epic show. I have an amazing guest. Actually, she's like my little sister. She is an attorney and she does some amazing things. Now, one thing about this young lady, I knew that she was going to be phenomenal from even being a little kid. And her name is Dr. Cynthia Hardy. Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michelle. It's so good to see you. And thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you are amazing. And I tell everybody, I knew that you were going to be amazing from a child because as a child, we were like going to the park to play. And since it's like, oh no, I'm not playing today. I got to read my book. I got to catch up with my mama. She's reading, we're sharing books. So I knew that you would be an epic person, that you would go on to do phenomenal things. So tell everybody a little bit more about you because I know about you, but I want you to share it with everybody around the world.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And I have to tell people a little bit too about us. So I call Michelle my big sister. We grew up in Meridian, Mississippi, and we grew up in the east end of town. And we grew up in St. Francis, which was a public housing development. We called it the projects. Michelle's family lived in the building behind our building. And just like everyone there, we knew the Coxes, there were the Hardys, there were the Dawsons, right? There were the Joneses, and all of those folks looked out for each other. Her daddy, Mr. Emil, was the coolest dude around. And her mother, Miss Lucille, oh my God, she was the epitome of poise and grace. And when Michelle and her family moved there, I have to tell her she will be embarrassed that we all said that they talked proper. So Michelle and her family have been a part of my family for over 50 years. Now, that included coming down to our house, and as Michelle knows, with my mom, Miss Ola Mae Davis Hardy, she had rules. So if you were coming to our house, you had to abide by those rules. She also had expectations. My mother was a domestic. She cleaned homes for white families, 2 and 3 jobs, and she raised 6 kids. And she would tell all of us and our friends that you may not have a dime, but you have a mind and you better use it. She had very high expectations and they started with learning. My mom believed that in order for you to move and to progress, not only did you have to read, but you had to understand and you had to analyze and you had to question and you had to think for yourself. And she understood at the time that those things were important in order for you to move forward in life. Now, we wanted to hang out, right? But right after school, we had all of the work to get done related to school. When everybody else could hang out, she's on the porch calling us all by our first name to come in. And she ensured that we watched the news every night and we told her a story from the news. We had to learn vocabulary words, how to spell them and use them in a sentence. And my mom and I had a special relationship tied to books. As she was an avid reader, as was I. I didn't have my own room, or I didn't share a room with siblings. I shared a room with my mom growing up. And so at night, every night, she had the light on reading her book. I had the light on reading my book, and we would share stories. We would take the Reader's Digest condensed book vocabulary test. It was a competition that we would do. But my mom understood that the ability to learn wasn't tied to income. It was tied to a desire. And she also understood that reading and books were windows to something else. And that certainly was the case for me. So I was able to go from what I call a nested existence in St. Francis, in the 2.5 mile perimeter of East End, in Meridian in Mississippi. I could go all over the world reading every book I could get my hand on and literally staying at the library as much as possible. And so the world became something that I dreamt about. And I just knew that there were other worlds to see. And my mom supported that, pushed it incredibly hard. And reading became just like brushing my teeth. Even now, every night, 11 o'clock, I turn the light on and I'm reading. And that has been not a discipline, but a love. And when it's something that you love, you do it. It's a passion. And I have piles of books. I have digital books. I just know that it has bred curiosity. It also has taught me a lot about tolerance. It's taught me so much about places where I haven't been, experiences that I haven't had, and made me eager to experience those things. Those all translated for me into the ability to go to college as the first person in my family to graduate from college, and understanding that that was the beginning of a legacy that actually started so many generations before. And I went to Xavier in New Orleans and totally loved it, majored in economics, and then went on to law school at Notre Dame and practiced law in the largest law firm in the world, and then in corporate settings. And by serendipity, moved over to the business side. And I began as a product manager running P&Ls of domestic companies and global companies. And running P&Ls means basically that your butt is on the line. So I love that. And I began to really understand that continuous learning was so important. And I, 9 years ago, started my own company, Pivot Global Partners. It is a company that presents a niche for companies, public and private, and nonprofits. We work for the C-suite leaders in an organization. And we focus on people and we focus on process. So let me tell you what I mean by that. We will very much focus on individual leaders and their capacity to expand what they do to be more effective. And so through assessments, through coaching, one-on-one, we intensely work with leaders so that they are more effective in leading their organizations. We then will work with their teams. So we will do the same thing. We'll take an entire team and run assessments, but we will focus on leadership development and coaching. And it's about the team dynamic and how it is that you take a variety of people and get the best out of them. We are very focused on training and ensuring that within an organization, it's not just that you did some episodic work, one thing at a time, but that you are doing things that stick. And so the talent dimension is so important. And I focus on that because having run organizations up to 7.5 billion in dozens of countries, fundamentally, I get it. It's not the strategy. It's not your capital formation. It's your people that will make or break you. And so the other element of what we do is reposition an organization through talent and developing them. We reposition an organization to be able to deliver results. And we do that on the tough issues. For instance, ensuring that you have diversity, equity, and inclusion in an organization. So the diagnostics that come along with that, preparing leaders to be able to lead and make the decisions that ensure that you know your customer base and how they're changing, their demographics, their wants and needs, how you line up and meet that, how your products line up and meet your customers' needs, and then how your employees have the background and the experience and the demographic profiles to meet those customer needs. All of that is a 360. And so we work to ensure that leaders aren't just developing in the abstract, but they are developing, they're prepared to meet some of the toughest issues that are presenting within any organization. And I tell you, we get excited about it, but a typical example of this, Michelle, would be, and this is true, an organization that wants me to come in and talk about my book, Crossing Meridians, Engineering Disruption to Become a More Effective Leader. And so I do a webinar, and then I coach, really my team coaches. We have 22 individuals, professionals across the country, but they coach a couple of the senior most leaders in the organization. They then say, oh, we need some training. Can you guys do that? And so we develop training. They then say, well, we've got some critical things that are opportunities for us or choke points. And if we can figure out how to pivot in these areas with some original thinking and original solutions, we think that we can meet mission better or outcompete. And so we will tell you what it is that we do and what we don't do. But often those solutions are what I call the foundation for innovation. You're trying to do something significantly different, and you've got to figure out, how do you align your people? How do they have the skills? And how do you put in place the structures and processes to get it done? And that's where we thrive. And often that is in the DEI space, where it's a complement of that work with talent. But it also happens when you see that an organization is trying to reposition themselves and do things very, very differently. There are change elements there that you have to be very thoughtful about. And the work that we do, quite honestly, is so practical, because everyone in my organization has sat in the seats of what we know what our clients are up against. And so we're not talking about anything theoretical. We know actually how to drive these solutions into an organization, make them stick, and give you some results. So I appreciate you giving me the chance to tell this cursory story and to connect it to what it is I do. Because the biggest thing that I find in this business is that I have to constantly learn. I am constantly reading, taking courses, understanding how are we positioned from a niche standpoint. Are we offering what our clients want, need, and will pay for? Do we have the professional acumen needed? So an example would be, where are we in addressing the needs of artificial intelligence for our clients, right? So machine learning and artificial intelligence and autonomy, those things matter. Well, you sure better figure that out and figure out who are the experts that you need, but it's ongoing learning that's going to make sure you're not a dinosaur. It's not just about staying relevant. It's about ensuring that you're cutting edge in your thinking and in your delivery. And so reading, for me, certainly from a business standpoint, allows us to stay relevant and to thrive, because I moved from curiosity and abstraction to education to actually adopting those things that I've learned. That's an ongoing cycle. And I look for that in all the people that touch and support our business. And at a personal level, I can't thrive unless I'm reading. That's just the way it is.
I love it. I love it. So, like I told you, everybody, phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. And this is epic. Now, Sin, I know you, but tell everybody when you started reading, what age you started reading at.
I was 3 when I started reading. And if you remember Newell Chapel Head Start, I'm a phenomenal proponent of the Head Start program. My siblings, we all went, and at Newell Chapel CME Church in Meridian, their Head Start program was amazing. So between my mom's focus and what I did at Newell Chapel, I was able to read at 3 years old.
Amazing, amazing. Now, you told us how much reading has impacted your professional life, but tell us one of your favorite books as a child.
Oh, as a child, without a doubt, it was the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman by Ernest Gaines. Oh my gosh. So of course everyone saw it on television, right? Movie adaptations and TV adaptations I will look at, but I'm always going to read the book. And when I read that book, I felt like I saw a connection between the life my grandparents lived in the country with a house that they built, 4 rooms, press board, tin roof, no outhouse, right? Just that was their life. And we loved to go out there and we'd roam around and in the woods. But their life was also coming out of sharecropping and coming out of the plantation society. So I understood that, and I understood the speaking in the book because that was my great grandmother. That was my grandmother. That was my great grandfather. And so it was if it was connecting that whole world that I came from with a world that I was living in and placing it publicly in a place that celebrated who we were. Because there weren't other books that reflected who we were historically and who we are today. And I fell in love with that book. And I will tell you the other book that today, I read it first as a teenager, and I've continued to use this book. It's one of the first ones in my bookcase, is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, a Lebanese American writer. And it's poetic essays that I think are some of the most beautifully written. And it is a mainstay along with Toni Morrison's books, particularly Song of Solomon and Sula, because again, she wrote books for Black people, about Black people in a way that was extraordinary. Resonated with larger audiences, but as writers who had messages, they delivered in different ways. But those two current day, I would say, are my favorite authors, Toni Morrison, Khalil Gibran.
That is awesome. Well, Sin, you know, this time goes by fast. We got to take a small commercial break. Everybody, we're going to be right back on the importance of power of reading with my good friend, Dr. Cynthia Hardy.
Since 1877, Jackson State University has been training students for a life of service and leadership to impact our global society. Ranked among the best HBCUs in the country, Jackson State University offers 47 undergraduate, 37 master's, 1 specialist, and 13 doctoral degree programs. Whether you're interested in the arts, education, public health, the sciences, or business, we're here to take you from ready to JSU ready. Visit jsums.edu and apply today.
Everybody, welcome back. We are having an epic show. I can't tell you how blessed I feel, because when you watch someone grow up, when you know someone as a child and you see in them their greatness, and for you to see them and they go along their path, and you know that their mom, a phenomenal person as well, even though we grew up in Jim Crow South and segregation, that they rose to the highest heights and reading took them there. And that's my friend, Cynthia Hardy. Cynthia, welcome back. Now, we've been discussing what your favorite books are, and we know that you've been a phenomenal reader. But let's talk for a minute about the state of literacy here in the United States among our children, our adolescents, and our adults, and what you think we are in right now, if we're in crisis, or what can we do better to elevate ourselves and our community?
I'm so glad that you're asking this question because I think this is at the heart of our ability to thrive as a culture. Because if we aren't reading, if we aren't learning, we're not progressing. And literacy is under attack for a number of reasons. The good news is, just as it is under attack, there are phenomenal efforts out there to ensure that our children are reading, that they are proficient, and that they are then using that as a foundation for excellence to do amazing things. But let's just talk about what happens when we say reading is under attack. So we know when we look at, in particular, youth dropping out at the 8th grade level, there's a cliff there, especially for African American young men. And with the dropout rate increasing, we then know that that directly affects certainly ongoing learning and opportunities. But if you back up and you look at what happens within the family and the opportunity for a child who's 3, like I, to learn to read, 5 who's starting preschool, going into first grade. When you're challenged there as a kid, there's nothing you can do unless you have the support systems around you. And it takes not just the parent, but it takes everyone who understands that this child is precious, this child deserves attention, this child deserves to learn, and not just do it in a mediocre way, but in a spectacular way so that it is catalytic for them. Here's what I mean. And I speak from personal experience. I could read at 3 with my mom's persistence, and I was in Head Start. And I could name those people, Mr. Coleman, Miss Bell, those in that Head Start who cared and they supported my interest. When I then moved into elementary school, I had a teacher who was phenomenal, Edwina Chastang Blakely. Ms. Blakely was an institution when schools were segregated, and when schools were integrated, she was there to make sure every opportunity afforded white students was also afforded to Black students. So in the 5th grade, she fought for me to go into the talented and gifted program. Now, she said, there isn't testing needed because I know your reading level already far surpasses others in this school system. But what would I have known about that program? What would my mom would have known, but for her help? She also had a system where she knew there were things I needed to know going into that program that I didn't have access to. So she started having me grade papers after school. I never graded a paper. What she actually did was supplemental learning. And so she really set a steeper slope for me to learn things outside of the classroom. And then she took it even further. On Saturday mornings, I was to come to her house and help her with chores. I never helped with chores. She or her husband would pick me up, take me to their house, and I would get additional learning. So here's an example. She had a globe, and of course we didn't have a globe. Who could afford a globe? She'd spin the globe, and wherever it landed, I had to learn about that country, the people, their customs, and be able to talk to her about it the next time. She had a full place setting. I'll never forget this, of dishes. We did not at home. Who had that? My mom taught us etiquette, but I'd never seen a full place setting. So she would always prepare lunch with a perfectly set table, and we would go over all of the etiquette rules. Why? She knew I would be in an environment where it was needed. And so I could give you so many examples of people who helped even when I didn't know I needed help. So literacy matters. It is the ongoing learning that happens that also comes along with the ability to read. And if you don't surround a young person with the help, they're going to be lost. They often won't know what they need help with. So it does take this responsible, dedicated community of people who determine that it's not just reading, it's not just literacy, but it's about life choices and the abilities to support ongoing learning and create exposure and opportunity. So it starts with reading, Michelle, without a doubt, because it's the foundation for everything. But until we feel that there can't be one single child who, at whatever age is appropriate for them, is able to read and be proficient, and who has their curiosity piqued, and they can satisfy that by getting to libraries, by doing digital downloads, by getting access to any kind of information that allows them to continue to learn. If there are impediments to that, we haven't done our job. And I'm so passionate about this because I do believe that access to education is so important. Support for education is so important. And when we marginalize and underfund and don't pay attention to this, we pay, the impacts are generational, negatively generational.
I totally agree, because one of the things that I knew, and that's one of the reasons why I loved your mom so much, she always spurred us to learn. She always gave us examples to learn. Now, folks, just so you know, Cynthia's mom, Mrs. Ola Mae Hardy, taught me how to drive a stick shift truck.
Yes, she did.
Yes, yes, she did. But she was always encouraging because I'm a tall woman, and Mrs. Hardy was a tall woman, and she was always like, just like my mom, stand straight, be proud.
That's right.
And so she gave me so much inspiration in my life. She would share books with me as with others in the community. So we want to take this time to dedicate this show to Miss Ola Mae Hardy and for all the things she's done in the community in Meridian, Mississippi. Now, on that, of course, we got to take another small commercial break, and we'll be right back with my good friend, Cynthia Hardy, on the importance and power of reading. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Michelle.
We are dedicating this program to Mrs. Ola Mae Hardy. Are you a company, business, or service that believes in social responsibility? Would you like to make a positive impact? You can. You can sponsor this program and be seen by 2 million viewers on the PIC TV network. Call 770-367-1268 for more information today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this segment of the importance and power of reading. Oh my gosh, I'm telling you, if you're not watching this, you need to, because this segment is going to bless your soul. My good friend, Cynthia Hardy, she's amazing. She's an author, she's an entrepreneur, she's an attorney, and she helps businesses grow. She's been sharing her journey on this reading stage from reading at 3 years old with her mom, pushing her, and all the people in the community, and how we can help by making sure that we're engaged with our children on the importance and power of reading. Now, Cynthia, welcome back. I've got another question because you've got brothers and I got brothers. But I've noticed that with boys, because they like to be rambunctious, they like to go out and play. How can we engage our boys more in this love of reading, in this journey? Do you have some pointers?
I do, because I think about, and I appreciate this question because I think about what my mom did and what she may have done differently with her boys and her girls. And I think my mom understood that there are different pressures that boys face. And they're just things that might interest them that are different. Her expectations never wavered. She had high expectations for all of us, no exceptions. But how she went about it differed. And with her boys, my two brothers, she allowed them to find the place where they were most interested and then connect reading to that. And so often that was sports, but my mom could referee a game. So she got to know sports really well. And whether it was the coverage of sports, autobiographies of sports figures, she just helped them to become immersed in the things that they were interested in. And it wasn't cookie cutter. And I saw that that was the avenue that she used with them. I think she also saw that having other voices beside herself as the mom raising 6 kids solo, trying to be both parents, at times would be inadequate. And so she looked for those male support figures that would promote reading and learning and figuring out how to be a good person. So with my oldest brother, Columbus Hardy Jr., who we call Junior, he became a member of the Boy Scouts. And Mr. Rush, if you remember, was the leader of the Scouts. My brother talks about him to this day. When I was home earlier this year, we rode by Reese Courts, we rode by his house, and he began to reminisce about scouting and Mr. Rush. And so the impact of people like him, leaders of organizations that support young boys and girls, young boys in particular, can't be underestimated. So the parents figure out the conduit, what the kid is interested in. Don't give up on the expectation. Connect to other people that are as passionate about developing youth, and then kind of let your kids go and they'll flourish. And you know, my mom didn't have a formula for this. She couldn't be everyone for everybody and everywhere at the same time. But I look back on it and I just see that she just did a phenomenal job. And we all understood. I'll say this also, Michelle. My mom would say to us, you may say ain't with your friends, but you're going to say something totally different when you need to, and you will know the difference. And she was so insistent on that. And because of that, that's what I mean by not backing down on the standards and the requirements. And so we all had to have that foundation of learning. What we did with it was up to us, but it absolutely gained momentum and was propelled even further, especially my brothers, when they connected with organizations that supported young men, young Black boys and young Black men in the community. And I saw that make such a huge difference. The church is another example of that from growing up. But if you look today, there's so many opportunities for parents who are thinking about how to support reading and learning growth with Black boys. You know, the Boys and Girls Club is a phenomenal example. I think Derek McKee, who is a retired NBA player who comes from our community in Meridian, Mississippi, is someone that should be praised for the work he's done consistently for decades with the Boys and Girls Club. People like him who reach back, who say, I was that kid, and they're going to put their money where their beliefs are to try to ensure the organizations are there to support reading and learning, growth and development for youth. There are so many of those. Kiwi Dixon is here in the Atlanta area where I am. Kiwi is also from Meridian, played in the Continental Basketball League forever, has been connected with the Boys and Girls Club. He does the same thing. And so when people have been the beneficiary, young men and boys, of that kind of help, I believe they continue it on, and they do it wholeheartedly, and it benefits our youth. And it just pays tremendous dividends. So look for those organizations, look for those people. There are so many. And the biggest thing I think you can do is ask for help. You can't do it all as a parent. There are so many other supporting organizations out there. Talk to other parents, use resources at school. And then within the community, there are committed people who want to make sure that our youth are thriving. Tap into those resources.
I concur wholeheartedly. And to all my brothers and sisters out there in Meridian, Mississippi, that are making sure as a village that our kids continue to grow, and to our neighbors around not only the United States, but the world. Remember, the village makes our children grow and thrive. And it's up
Yes.
to each and every one of us, not only to give, but to look at a child and create an opportunity. So thank you so much for that, Cynthia. Now, I have another question.
Yes.
Well, your mom spurred your love of reading. How important was it that she had books for you to access in the home?
Oh, wow. Well, it was important, but we didn't have many books in the home. So we had secondhand books that the Reader's Digest condensed books, for instance, right? But we didn't have encyclopedias. We didn't have bookcases full of books. So it doesn't actually take having a young person being surrounded by books. It's access to them. And for us, that meant back in the day, you were going to the library. We would walk downtown to the public library. Well, first they had carpet and they had air conditioning. So in the summertime, that's where you wanted to be. But they had a summer reading club, and just the carols of books. For me, I could spend all day in the library. I would get lost there. And that would happen also at school. And we would borrow books from places. Today's world is so different. You can download whatever you want, but the reality is there are so many children who don't have devices, who don't have access to the internet, who don't have command of the digital world right at their fingertips. So you have to think about ways that you create access. And for a parent that says, I don't have books, and so I can't provide that for my child, it isn't that you have to have them, that you have to shell out the dollars. It is that you know the pathways that allow your child to get to those books. And there are so many, and this is so important because if you don't have access, then you don't have the opportunity. And when you shut down that opportunity to learn and to read and to grow, that means you're shutting down someone's future. So those organizations that you see that, Michelle, you're the computer lady, you do this all day long, but there's so many organizations out there where you've got free Wi-Fi, where they have devices there. Kids can go use them. They can check them out. They can take them home. They can get access to physical books, not just the digital. It's there. If you aren't quite sure where to go, just ask for help, because there is no one that will say no, who will not go out of their way to help your child get access to books and reading support.
And that's absolutely correct. So, libraries, secondhand books. I remember when we used to go down to the train station and trade comic books,
Yes,
because having comics, having graphic novels, as long as you're reading, it doesn't
that's
have to be just a big chapter book. Anything that you can get at your hands on. It can be a recipe, as long as you're spurring that love of reading. However you get there, just get on the reading journey. Now, Cynthia, we talk about STEM because you're a lawyer, but you're also an entrepreneur. Well, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, is today and the future. How can we get our kids to gravitate more towards STEM learning? Do you have some books, some ideas, some ways that you can share with us?
Oh, I think this is uh, such an important question, because if you think about, I just want to start with where jobs are going, because learning prepares you for careers. Careers are open because there's a demand in the market. That is changing so rapidly due to STEM. Michelle and I, before coming on, were talking about artificial intelligence. And just as you begin to see a change in the auto industry some years ago, driven by technical capabilities, you're seeing a sea shift across industries around the use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and computer capabilities. So, to be prepared for those jobs, we've got to position our kids now. We've got to understand that the marketplace is changing, that the skills required to take on those jobs very different. Some of these jobs that exist today will be going away, and we want our kids to be best matched. So how do we do that? When we think about STEM, everything connected to computers, everything will be in demand. You just start there with the basic concept. So we want to know, are we introducing our kids to computers, not just from a technical standpoint to learn skills, but also as a platform for learning and then delivering? And I think it's so important, because if it's integrated into our psyche and into how it is that we do what we do every day, then the hurdles go away. And so STEM does that. And I think my best example here, Michelle, of the power of what happens when young people, young Black youth, are introduced to STEM is one of my best friends, Lisa Gilbert, Chicago, fellow Xavierite, and we met first day of school. Lisa, by profession, is a chemist, and she went to work with the Illinois State Police, and she did drug identification for many years. And then she trained to become a latent print examiner. Lisa has been so passionate about working with young people, and so she lives on the south side of Chicago, grew up there, and began working with an organization called Project Exploration. And it took Black youth boys and girls, primarily girls, and she created an after-school program for them in forensic science. And she even, in one instance, had one of the parks on the South Side, worked with the local police, and they had a crime scene that they set up. And the youth went in and they learned, they had other forensic scientists as volunteers. They learned to collect the evidence. They learned to tag it. They had parents who were the judges. They had a mock court where they had to introduce the evidence. So Lisa fundamentally understands what happens when you move kids from, they call her Miss CSI, when you move them from hearing about it to experiencing it. And that work has been so powerful. She's continued it in different ways. And this is an example of the power of one individual. Currently, she is at the Illinois State Police, and she also is an adjunct professor at Loyola University. What does she teach? Intro to forensics and ethics for forensics. So she continues to incubate a pipeline of people that look like us moving through STEM roles. So I use Lisa as an example of what can be done across our communities and what is happening all the time. And so if you take an interest in a young person and you understand that STEM is such a broad category, the possibilities are endless. You want to make sure we are prepared and we're matching up to the jobs and the workplace that's changing. How do we best do that? By taking people like us who are invested, who know how important it is, and who get involved and come up with creative solutions to accelerate the possibilities for our kids.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing and phenomenal. Now, as you know, this time passes by so fast, but I have one last question. Number one, can you give our children out there 2 or 3 books that you're reading, our children, our young people, and our adults, some things that you're reading right now, some titles, and can you share the title of your book and tell everybody where they can get it?
Absolutely. So thank you for bringing me back to the book that I wrote, Crossing Meridians, Engineering Disruption to Become a More Effective Leader. I wrote the book, Michelle, because I had been coaching, managing and leading organizations and working with clients where in so many instances I saw people of color who were falling through the cracks. And I would have the conversations with them around their challenges, and they felt that they weren't being developed, the investments weren't happening, that for whatever reason, they were falling through the cracks. And I felt it was important to come up with a way to speak to aspiring to mid-career leaders so that they could, in a very self-directed way, plan and execute their development. And it wouldn't depend on the sophistication of the organization they were in. It wouldn't depend on the interest from their individual manager. It wouldn't require those things. It would require them to have a method, one that they committed to and understood, and one that was entirely reflective of who they were. So that's what we do in Crossing Meridians. I share personal stories along the way. I share anecdotes. But I fundamentally believe that when you extract who you are, you pull that out and you shape it in a way that's important, you can set your own path for learning and development. And I am delighted to tell you that Kirkus Reviews, a very tough book reviewer, has given us glowing reviews. The book is in the top 10% of their reviews globally. And they describe it as cohesive and bold and an engaging path to effective leadership. So I would encourage everyone to take a look. I think the feedback has been from readers that it helps everyone, not just aspiring to mid-career leaders. Now, in addition to my own book, I would tell you that my reading interests vary, and I'm currently reading The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. It's a wonderful book. I love books that have a historical setting and that are internationally placed. And that is the case. It's set in India across generations. And it's a wonderful book. It's a wonderful piece of literature. I would also tell you I'm rereading something that I think is so important. It's a book by Jose Saramago, and it's called Blindness. And I'm rereading it because it speaks to a society where everybody goes blind, and you begin to see how people break down norms of behavior and what it is at our basis level that we will do. When you extract from that an understanding fundamentally of people, when there's crisis, when the norms are broken, it instructs you. And I think that's happening societally in so many ways. And so that book I find instructive. And I will tell you, I go back to um, my favorite authors. So Ben Okri from Africa, I love Dostoevsky and Turgenev and Tolstoy from Russia, Isabel Allende, Jose Saramago and Paulo Coelho from South America, right? I try to bring the world in, and I've been blessed to be able to travel the world, but it starts with being able to read about other cultures and people and issues and integrate some of that thinking into how it is that I approach issues, how I approach people, and have a wider appreciation for what's important. So I try to keep my aperture broad, and reading helps me to do that. But that gives you an indication of the many different books that I have sitting on my shelf right now that I'm reading all at one time.
That is phenomenal. And don't forget, we had you gave a wonderful birthday party for your friend Nelda,
Yes.
and we discussed the book by Viola Davis,
Yes, we
Finding
did.
Me.
Yes.
That was phenomenal. I had to get back into it because the book is very strong and it can be triggering, but to go through her story and then have this rousing discussion, it blessed my soul. So thank you
Um,
so very much. Cynthia, this interview has been epic, phenomenal, transformative, and inspirational. And I want to take this time to give you your flowers and thank you for joining me.
Well, Michelle, I have to thank you. This has been a lifetime journey for us. If you're from St. Francis, you're always part of the family. And you have supported us over the years. I'm so humbled to hear the impact my mom had on you, and when it comes to reading and when it comes to life's lessons, and that she had a generosity of spirit. I think that many benefited from. And I try to make sure that what I'm doing in my daily walk is what she'd be proud of. I think she would be delighted with this conversation here, and in that we are encouraging young people to be their best, to read, to learn, encouraging parents to take an interest, encouraging people who surround our young people to understand that we all have that obligation to reach out and to put our hands on them and to not let go. And so I thank you so much for this. It means so much to me. And you're doing yeoman's work here. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so very much. Everybody, that was Cynthia Hardy. Now, we have an opportunity as a society, we have an opportunity as a world to make sure that we reach back and take our kids on a reading journey so they can know the importance and power of reading. Join me on this segment and next week. We'll see you soon.
Hi, I'm Michelle the Computer Lady, author and children's book publisher of the Mommy Readers Collection series of books. Well, we know how important it is for us to read, but we also know how important our public hospitals are. We're here in Atlanta. My public hospital is Grady. They saved my life. And I would like to give back, and I need your help to do so. I've created a new fundraiser called Building Towards Our Future. And what's going to happen is we're going to make sure, you and I together, that Grady keeps on serving the marginalized, the poor, and the indigent in the Atlanta metro area. All right, stay tuned for more announcements. I'm going to be telling you how real soon. Thank you for joining me in this fight to make sure that we can live with Grady.
You know what's going on in our society, book banning, and over 38 million children don't have books in their homes. Join me for some exciting segments as we talk about the importance and power of reading with my guest on the PIC TV network, channel 1000.